Hello, hello. I am back. It's Kenyon here. Another day for you guys. But same day for us. This is side B. Side B, sometimes the best side, depending on the album. Beyond Coach Tyler. I'm assuming you're still doing well, so we're gonna just skip past the pleasantries and we're gonna go right into it. We have a couple questions kind of related to how I guess European prospects are sometimes viewed versus especially their comparables. But I'm gonna let Beyond kind of lead the discussion.
Yeah, I actually want to broaden it out. I won't even say European. I say international players versus American players, right? Because sometimes me personally, and Tyler's made a great person to discuss this. That's kind of involved in the draft industrial complex that's going on. The machinations happen on a daily basis. How that happens with these guys. And I'm curious because this centers around Mr. Holland. I was following your discussion on X a couple of days ago. People asking what is going on. So it was quite entertaining going back and forth. And I'll give some of the guys credit responding, because I understand where some of the guys were coming from. And I guess I'll take it from here. Holland does seem to be dropping. I don't know how far the drop is. Is it out of the lottery completely? Because I'll tell you right now, Raptor fans, if he's there at 19, I don't give a damn about any of these conversations. Draft him at 19, okay? I don't care. Any big, any guys, I'm a Silva guy, any of them. If Holland's sitting there at 19, draft Holland. That's what I'm saying here. However, there does seem to be something where Holland, and we saw it, and you mentioned it up to about 3 weeks ago, actually, before this conversation, where you made a little note about, something about, someone could be the new Cam Whitmore this year. Now, I am of the mindset that I'm wondering, like, I do feel sometimes international players get a bit of grace versus some of the American players. And the reason why I say is I take the two examples. Let's start with Riche. Riche sometimes gets comped as Mr. Batum, right? As Nicholas Batum, part 2.0, right? And sometimes, and I think you mentioned in your last call, your last pod, maybe it might be your last, or one of the most recent ones with one of your colleagues, talking about Holland. Good, by the way, good video, by the way, guys. Yeah, I was enjoying it. But how some people in this case have referenced him as like, okay, he's Corey Brewer. Now, I personally do not see that, but fair enough. Everyone's got their own eyeballs and see what they want to see with it. But even if we were to take the two comps that we're talking about, Batum or Brewer, I do feel within basketball circles, people look at Brewer and look at Batum in a higher light than Brewer, even though statistically their numbers aren't that much different. And quite honestly, Brewers, in theory, is what they like to call a winning player, two-time national champion. Hey, played for my boys in this case, Dallas Mavericks, for championship team. And I do find it interesting from that standpoint where it sometimes seems like if people like, it seemed like, even from the comp standpoint, sometimes it's enlightened that, well, he's Batum in this case, maybe because he's a standard 3-and-D guy. But I do wonder a little bit if there's sometimes the American player, because there's expectations that American player, if he's a high draft pick, he's going to be the next, I don't know, pick whatever guy, Kevin Durant, he's going to be the next superstar coming. And we don't have that same expectation for a lottery pick that has to be of international, from someone from international waters, where we say, okay, he's going to be the next. I never hear anyone say he's going to be next, say he's an African player, he's going to be next Akeem Olajuwon. I don't ever hear anyone say that. They just say, like, okay, he's going to be a good player, and we'll see what happens. Even someone like Luka when he got drafted, who in this case here, he got drafted. I never felt any comps in this case, just considering he went the same team, as like dirt in any sort of way. And I do wonder sometimes if that comes into play from as biases versus American players, because you tell me, you've been doing this for a while, Tyler. I can't think of any international player that's been considered to be a lottery pick that has had any precipitous drops that we see with Whitmore. We've seen other American players in the past, and potentially with Holland right now, where it's like you were like potentially a top 6-7 pick, and then you're down like 16. I've usually seen them go the other way, where I seen like a Koulibaly last year within 2 weeks was a guy was like 27, and all of a sudden he's getting picked by Washington in like the top 8. So I'm just wondering, from your perspective, is there something in the water how we view these guys that it makes it a little tougher for American players when it comes to their faults? They're kind of expounded upon a lot more than, say, the international players.
Uh, yes and no. I would say yes because it's easier to get to the States with seeing these guys. It's easier access. You just jump, and everyone would be like, "Hey, they can fly across." No, GMs are not going to fly middle of the season across to take 15-hour flights or whatever to try to track down a guy and watch him for a week. Now, assistant GMs, yes, going with the owners, you can work around that, but that's why they're so aggressive with trying to get these guys in for private workouts, is because they want to have everyone get eyes. Sometimes you have your international scouts, you have guys that are based all over the world that can be area scouts. So I think it's just, you got to get more creative when it comes to seeing the international guys. Everyone has their own job if you're a scout in the front office, but you give your reports, you kind of update. But then when a guy's really buzzing, it's like, okay, I got to set time away for, instead of going to the States, I got to go over to go see him. And, what if you go over and that guy got hurt 2 days earlier? Then all of a sudden you're, okay, I can barely see him, or, you missed that opportunity. So I think some travel can come into it. The States guys, I think, just get more buzz. We've got the ESPN buzzing them as high school players, and now they're coming with expectations and this just unrealistic hype of like, Imani Bates is the next Kevin Durant. It's like, okay, how'd that work out? So I think, it's also tougher too with international guys that play for powerhouse teams. Now, I'm not saying J.L. Borg was, but like, we've looked at previous drafts, like other guys playing for really talented teams. And it's like, well, they got drafted earlier, but they played 10 minutes a game. Why is that? They didn't really do anything. And it's like, because them playing 10 minutes on that team is very, very impressive because of how good that team is. It's like having a defending champion of veterans. All of a sudden you put a rookie in at 18 and he's earned a spot in the rotation. So I do understand what you're saying a little bit. Trying to think of the Ron Holland hour.
Yeah, because
it was pretty fun.
Yeah.
That's my biggest lesson in the draft space of don't have multiple days of 3 or 4 hours of sleep. Just probably stay off the internet. I was trying to kind of open some eyes and just worded it the wrong way. But basically what I was trying to say, everyone thought I was trying to attack his character, and I would never do that as another human being without knowing someone. I would also just never do it ever. There's just been there's been some questions from people about the work ethic. And, if you're raw and you have some upside and the work ethic's in question, well, like if your game's not improving, how are you going to get better if your work ethic's in question? I've heard Ron's a fantastic kid. I've heard great things, but there's just some questions about that. And then I think when you go back and why he's slipping a little bit, and I don't think that's the only reason he's slipping, but I think when you go back and look at it, it's a tough situation. The Ignite this year was for Ron to put him in.
I was just about to mention that.
There's almost an attacks on these three guys. All Ignite guys, I think, have gotten attacks. He's taking the biggest brunt in my mind, but please continue.
Yes. No, and that's kind of where I think that's the heart of why he's falling. Is because it was a tough situation to like, hey, look at me. Because when you go watch, he's getting the ball. They're saying, do everything in the world you can. There's a lot of shots that are, wide open, that are sprayed everywhere. There's also a lot of shots where it's very tough and he makes it look easy. And you're like, what? Those are supposed to be opposite. Like that does not match. And then the decision making, like I know a lot of people love Ron. A lot of people, have him very high on their board. I'm just saying draft fans, other evaluators, because I think they're buying into him being just the guy. I continue personally, like I still have him at 10. And I still think there's great upside if he's a connecting piece alongside what you have going. Like if you don't ask Ron to be like, here's the ball, take care of everything. If you can get Ron to buy into being like a defensive minded addition, like connecting piece alongside, I think that's where he could blossom. I'm not saying he's this person, but like I would love him to buy into being Andre Iguodala. Like I just would love him to be like, I'm going to be nasty.
Doing that, man. You can't be.
That's literally what I said.
Yes. So I would love him to buy into that. And people would be like, he's got more upside that. And I'm like, I know he does, but I would love him to buy into that of just being like, I'm going to play really good defense, be a little bit of a playmaker, take care of the ball. And when it's my time to slash and attack, I can do that. But I've heard his workouts have been bad.
Yeah.
And I'm just talking about the shooting. And it's
Right.
not from one place. So that's tough because if people have questions about your shot and you're not proving them wrong with nobody guarding you, that's going to be tough. And so I just think I'm rooting for him because I think he's got so much upside, but I think he needs to fall the right place. That's just like, we're going to work with you and fix this and find a role because there's fun talent. He's a demon in transition. It's woof, you get on the edge of your seat the moment he's got a runway. But I think it was a tough fit for him with the Ignite, and it was unfair.
Yeah, that's what exactly that last point you made. I think in this case where I kind of pulling from because I think the NBA apparatus in this case have done a disservice to him as well as the other guys, and then it's almost like they're now coming down on them for like, oh, here, do whatever you want, and now they're shocked in this case where 18-year-olds doing whatever he wants, and they're like, oh. How dare you in this case not be disciplined and be able to be structured and understand your game at 19 or 18 years old. So that's the only reason why I'm like, because honestly, I think after Sarr and Castle, I think he has the most upside of anybody else in this draft in my mind. Like if you told me your 3 all-star scenario, if you told me 5 years from now he is one of the 3 guys, I would not be surprised. Honestly, he would, because I think he could be that good. Now, you're right. He might end up being Corey Brewer, or to your point, even if he's Iguodala, which is no slouch. Last time I checked, he made an all-star team once. So, like, it's fair enough, like, if that's the case. But I guess I'm just kind of, I hear these things in this case when I see the kind of the discourse with him, and I'm just like, well, when Adam Silver pretty much comes out in press conference and says we're done with the league, it tells you how bad the league was. Because usually an executive will come out and say, I told this to guys before you came on, they'll say like, well, we'll look into it, we'll review it, we'll do all the buzzwords, to kind of get you to the point that we know we're going to get rid of it, but we're going to be nice about it. He wasn't even trying to be nice about it. It's like, yeah, we're done. That shows you how big of a failure it was. And I just think that those guys, Matas to some extent as well, too, who was dropped a little bit. I think these guys have gotten kind of the raw end of it a little bit, and I feel for all of them because, like, we in this case here put them in that position, and now we're kind of punishing them for being in the situation. So that's my only thing. The only other thing I would say to you, or just to ask you about, because I don't know your next big board's out yet, but you still had Toppage at 3. And I'm sitting there going like, okay, hold on 1 second.
He's moved down a little. Not much, though.
Okay, so this is what I'll get. Okay, Kenyon already gave me the measurements. This is where I go back with this. I do wonder in this case the biases. Kenyon gave me the numbers in this case for his measurements. They're a little less than what we thought they would be as far as wingspan and length. Jay Billis's favorite lines in this case here. Okay, I thought that's what we're all into. And then I find out in this case here, and I told him when we did the play of them. I don't know if we did Toppage, but he was kind of in the conversation.
No. We never got to Toppage.
Yeah. And my big concern with Toppage has always been in any player. I said it earlier in this podcast or the previous podcast. Guys that get injured frequently when they're younger make me nervous. And that's 2 injuries so far in this year already he's had now, where I'm like, okay, you're 18, you've had 2 injuries already. And no one thinks you should drop a little bit more than down to 5 or 6. I am surprised about this. I'm like, really? And this is where I do wonder if this was an American player with the same length and stats like that, would he drop more in that sense? I do wonder that sometimes. I'll be honest, because if he was Joe Blow from Arizona and he had the same dimensions with the same wingspan with the injury conditions like that, ironically, that would be Cam Whitmore, who had an injury, and he dropped like a stone with more length. So I'm just saying, I find it interesting that he hasn't moved much. And I don't know, get your thoughts on that, because I'm still trying to find the argument of why he shouldn't drop based on his injury issues and his measurements from a length standpoint.
I think it's more the player. And what I mean by that is, Whitmore, if Whitmore had torn his ACL, couple months before the draft, everyone would be like, well, he uses his power, his athleticism to be effective. Topic is just, and I don't say this like in a bad way, but like Topic or ACL injuries just weren't what they were before. Like, and now it's kind of one of those, like, he's still incredibly young. He's one of the youngest guys in this class. He's the 7-foot wingspan has been my favorite rumor all year. We've been told that NoCeilings, like, I want to say February, March, that someone, I think an agent was like, that's wrong. Or no, a team source was like, that's wrong. It's like pretty much the same to his height. So we were like, well, let's see if he's right. And the report he finally got measured, and we were like, okay, we'll remember that guy for intel. So I think everyone was fascinated by that. But like end of the day, he's still a 6'6", 6'7" playmaking guard. Serbian leagues those guys are tough. So I'm not surprised that he tried to play through that. It's just those dudes are very, very good mindset usually. I've coached against them, and I was like, it'd be very fun to coach those guys. They're just very tough, very hard, like practice very hard. So I think he tried to. I think he got cleared, and I think also they're like, hey, we're not going to clear you until you're good to go. I think he tried to come back because he wanted to play. He had looked really good coming back, like in his first couple of games after missing a lot of time, and then it's a tough injury, and I knew something was serious because Serbians, you're not getting carried off the court if it was some sprain. No, he was walking off if it was a sprain. Like, they're just tough. That culture, that mindset, and Red Star, I know that they're like their program's very, very intense. So, I think it won't surprise me if he still slips. And I still have, on my board, I still have him high up because I think he's got a lot of talent. He's a special playmaker, some really good feel, but he doesn't use his athleticism to be effective. Like he's good with touch around the basket. I'm saying like floaters, and he's just what you need from him is the playmaking and the feel. So I get it. I still think he'll slip a little bit. I don't think it's going to be like he slipped into the second round, or I don't know if he'll slip like Whitmore. Because Whitmore's wasn't just knee people worrying about medicals. I think it was also he had a bad workout, and then that got around, and people were like, "Oh, he can't shoot, and he's got knee problem." And then now he looks like he landed in a great spot. Sometimes it's a blessing, and I know that's hard to understand, but
I mean, Whitmore had a great season in this case here. I was shocked when I saw his numbers today. I said, I didn't realize he averaged 12 a game. I knew he scored some points, but I didn't know it was at that clip. But I got leave it there. I appreciate the thoughts. I am curious. Maybe at some point when the draft's done and when all this thing shakes out, I'm curious to get your thoughts on how it shakes out because like you, I think you guys mentioned it. We've talked offline. I think Topish can't go past number 8, and we know who knows that number 8.
Yeah. And it's funny too. As we just go to the close of this mini segment, there's two guys that I basically predicted where they would go, but I didn't know with what pick they would go. That was Keontae George, and that was Cam Whitmore. I was like, Houston's gonna take Cam Whitmore. They need to take Cam Whitmore. What did they do? They took Cam Whitmore. This is way later than I thought that they were going to. So sometimes that also happens where, you have multiple picks in the right draft and you're able to scoop up a guy later on. So yeah. But we're going to just take a mini break for our listeners. And with that, we're, put something in, a coffee on or whatever, or just pause the video, and we'll see you in a second.